Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's lunchtime, actually. This is the first video in the Cessna 172 tutorial, specifically the A2A Cessna 172 tutorial. Now, this first video, we're not really going to go over any aircraft operations or systems. I'm just going to tell you how I have the airplane set up. I'm going to have the aircraft set up pretty much the same throughout the entire video series. So we're going to go over these panels, tell you how I have it set and what they do. This here is a notes panel, and the Shift 2 brings up the notes panel. This tells you what the outside temp is and the cabin temp is. Cabin condition is steady and cool. And this will show you some notes like ground speed, endurance, range, fuel economy, stuff like that, as well as some useful notes for operating the airplane. I tend to avoid bringing this one up though, except on accidents. Now Shift 3 is a controls. You can manipulate certain controls by clicking on them from here. I can turn on my defroster, cabin heat, and cabin vent. That's interesting to note about this airplane. Those controls are right here, by the way. This is cockpit heat, and this one here is ventilation. One of them is a defroster. That's the glare shield. Let's see. And so that's that. Now here you can also set your aircraft avionics up. I'm going to have the aircraft set usually for the GPS 295, which is how I like it. Now it's important to note you have three options. You have the GNS 400, or no GPS at all, and the 295. We're going to start with the no GPS. Now no GPS is the more traditional kind. This is pretty much what the default 172 will look like, with the exception that you have no GPS navigation capability with this. You can navigate via the radios. That's it. So navigation radios is it. If I had the GPS 295, now I have a GPS for situational awareness. I still have no GPS navigation capability, because if you note, this is a handheld GPS that's attached to the windshield via a suction cup. It's not connected to the aircraft's navigation equipment. However, by using the GNS 400, I now have GPS navigation capability. Now, I believe that this is, you can swap this GPS out with a Reality XP GPS or something similar. So that is doable. I tend to not use this one. For one, it gets rid of DME, and I kind of don't like that. If you notice, you have no DME indications anymore. You have to use the GPS's distance, which in most cases will be the same as DME, but there is a difference between DME and GPS distance. I've covered that before, but I'll just mention it again here, real quick here. Now, the distance is in slant range. Basically, a right triangle. The GPS reads one leg, which is your actual distance across the ground from the VOR. But a DME is slant range, or basically the hypotenuse. If you can think of the triangle, one leg is your altitude, the other leg is your distance from the station, then DME is the hypotenuse, if you can sort of visualize that. And that's what the DME reads, is the total distance from the transmitter to your receiver antenna on the aircraft in straight line distance. So if you pass over a station at 6,500 feet, your DME will read 1 nautical mile. So I tend to go with the GPS 295 because I still have DME, even though I lose the navigation capability. Let's see. Here you also have some switches. You can auto start, which I use quite a bit during this tutorial because I filmed the different parts at different times. So, and to avoid having to go through the actual startup every single time, I just click auto start. It's a godsend. You can turn damage on or off. I like having it on. It forces you to fly the plane correctly. With damage on, if you fly the plane incorrectly, you could break it. And here you can also control other things, your lights, stuff like that. If you can't find the switches down here, then you can get them right here. Now Shift 4 is the weight and balance. I'm always going to fly the airplane with as close to full fuel tanks as I can. Every single video will have that. with the exception of the airborne ones. They'll have whatever amount of fuel they had in them when I took off. As for payload, we'll have one pilot, this will be me, and we'll have Heidi in the right seat. She'll be flying with us. And well, the oil will change, I'm sure, during the flight, but we're always going to have at least 6 quarts. Right now we have 6.9. The total weight is 2,374, and payload is 395 pounds. So I won't be adding any baggage in the aircraft. I might do it for the cross-country portion of the video. This is the chart that they put in. Basically, it's a hacked version of the default radar screen. You can actually click this chart down here in the little bag to bring it up, and you get a cool sound effect when you do it. But yeah, this can be used for navigation too. I don't really use it that much though. So yeah, you can see all the fun stuff with it. Turn those rings off. There we go. So yeah, you can set this up to be a chart for you, basically a VFR chart. Shift 6 is just a radio. Same thing as here, except easier to understand. One thing I want to mention real quick before we get into the hangar, I'm going to be covering the avionics systems in the cruise video, because there's not really much to cruise, and if I just did what you did during the cruise portion, that video would only be like 5 minutes long. So I'm going to cover avionics, specifically the radios and really the autopilot, during the cruise video. So if that's what you're looking for, then stay tuned for that. Shift 7. Once the engine is running, you cannot access the maintenance hangar. I have the engine running right now. You could bypass this by clicking it, so we're going to do that. The maintenance hangar is where you set your aircraft up. Now, this is, if you follow the PMDG, this is basically what the FMS did. We can have a lot of fun stuff on this airplane. Now, I have gear fairings on the main and nose wheel. I also have flap seals, which take away, all those things will give you less drag and let the aircraft fly at cruise a little faster. As for the propeller, you can have either the 172S, which is a 60-degree, 76-inch prop, and that will give you roughly the same performance characteristics of a 172S, which is what the default Skyhawk is an SP, and what I flew in real life was the Skyhawk SP. So I usually take the 172S, so that way I have similar performance characteristics. By default, it will have the factory stock prop on it, which is a 75-inch, 70-degree pitch propeller, which is what you find on the 172R in real life. This does not give you the same performance characteristics. In fact, if you notice, when I swap them out, the RPM gauge changes, and you can hear the engine gets a little bit more power. That's why I like the 172S prop. Now on this clipboard, you'll find general information, notes about the aircraft, and what its overall condition is. So I've covered this stuff here. Over here, I'm going to use the AirTrack tires instead of the Airhawk tires. The Airhawk tires are more suited for taxiing around and takeoffs on hard surfaces, but since we're going to be doing soft and short field ops, and we are going to be on soft surfaces, I'm putting the AirTrack tires on, which is what I generally fly with anyway. They have more grip on a soft surface like this. As for the battery, really not sure what the difference between the two is. I usually go with the RG2415M. It looks a little cooler, but I don't really think there's too much of a difference between them. There might be. Read the manual and you'll find out. Now, I'll be using fine wire spark plugs. By default, you'll have massive wire spark plugs, and if you're unfamiliar with the 172, that's what I recommend. They're a little bit harder to foul up. Fine wire spark plugs are really easy to foul up if you don't operate the engine correctly, but they do give you more power and better performance, and they're more efficient at burning the fuel in the engine. Now I'm using 20W50 oil with the cam guard additive, just so you know. The 20W50 is the ideal oil for using in the conditions that we're going to be flying this airplane in most of the time around here. And everything on the engine is good to go. Shift 8 is the pre-flight inspection section. We'll go over this more during the pre-flight video, but suffice it to say, this is where you would go throughout the plane checking everything before every flight. And this is the last one. This is just an away from keyboard panel. It has a pause on setting, so you can have it pause at an altitude, a time, a distance, or an emergency. Very useful right there. Now if we go to the external view, you can see how I got the airplane set up. You see my gear fairings, you can see my flap seals if I turn them off real quick. You can see right there. The 172S uses Fowler flaps, and air will soup up into that little groove there. That causes some parasitic drag and slows us down. By putting flap seals there, we reduce that parasitic drag, and the aircraft has a little bit better performance on it. Right now, I have AI traffic on. I use Ultimate Traffic 2 mixed with some World of AI packages for military and missing airliners that UT2 doesn't have. So, they are active right now. They will be turned off during the videos. In fact, most of the videos I do for the tutorial will only be me flying around. There will be no other AI, no other traffic. That pretty much covers it. There's really, I mean, just read the manual if you have questions that comes with this airplane. That's pretty much it, and that's how I'm going to have the aircraft set up for this tutorial series. So I'm going to have GPS 295, gear fairings, flap seals, and 172S prop with air track tires. So, yep, that should about cover it. Next video will be the actual starting the tutorial. See you then.